everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us here today. The topic of this panel is diversity in tech, and this is an UmmaHacks, one of our UmmaHacks events for this hackathon. The main topic of this panel is specifically pertained to Muslim women navigating their way around tech and being in the corporate workspace. I will be your host today. My name is Rabia Mohiuddin. I am a senior computer science student at San Jose State University in the Bay Area. And I'm currently interning at one of the tech companies. So I know this is very relevant to me as well, just because as I start my tech career, I definitely want to know like what I should be looking out for as a Muslim woman in the workspace. So with that, I wanted to introduce all of our panel members. We have 4 panelists today. We have Yasmine Nassar, Iqra Dada, Nef Rogers, and Shafeen Patel. With that, could you guys tell us a little bit about yourselves, like the work you do, companies and organizations you guys work with, and feel free to throw in anything else about your journey or whatever else you want to throw in there for our amazing audience here today. Anyone want to go first, or should I call on someone?
Just call on someone.
All right, Iqra, go for it.
Okay, Assalamu alaikum everyone. I'm Iqra. I'm a product manager at Workday. Before that, I was an APM at Workday in their rotational program. And then before that, I was a CS grad from Rice University in Texas, where I'm from. I am part of organizations like Muslim Women in Tech and Pakistani Women of Computing, or in computing. Besides that, I'm still trying to figure out how to balance my free time outside of work. So I'm always working on like a side project. This past Ramadan, I worked on a zakat calculation tool with friends, and I'm currently working on another project during quarantine, just trying to, make my free time productive. On the side, my next adventure has been to get my real estate license and help the Muslim community buy up more beautiful California land. I will let someone else go now.
Who wants to go next? Yasmine?
Sure. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Yasmine. Currently working at Square on the observability team as a software engineer. And before I worked at Square, I graduated in June 2019, so last year, from UC San Diego with a computer science degree. I guess I should tell you what observability means. So basically my team creates tools to be used internally by other engineers to help track like the health of their services. So we make tools that make it easy to detect whether there's some kind of alert happening or something like that. Like make sure that people are aware at all times how their service is doing. So we have a lot of different tracking tools, I guess. I don't have other things that I can think of. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
And then our next panelist is Nef Rogers. Can you introduce yourself as well?
Sure. Assalamu alaikum everyone. My name is Nef Rogers, but I usually go by Nef. So I'm a software engineer at Microsoft. I've been working for about 2 years. It's kind of weird to say that. I do also feel like, as Shafeen mentioned, I'm kind of new to everything. Before that, and I'm working right now in the Seattle area. I've been within Microsoft, within Dynamics, it's kind of like CRM business app space. And then before that, I was studying in California. I went to UC Irvine. I did a major in computer science, like most people. I majored in informatics. And while I was at UC, I was kind of involved in NSB. So if anyone has questions about NSB, feel free to ask, as well as WICS, which is like Women in Computer Science. And then in my free time, I'm trying to get on that train of like doing side projects and making sure that I'm being productive, but mostly just like hanging out, exploring the area, also trying to like be involved in the Muslim community and stuff like that. So if people have questions around like, I guess, trying to be like doing something more fulfilling outside of work, feel free to ask those as well. Yeah, that's about it.
Thank you. I think like generally the way for our audience members and our panelists, generally the way that we want to structure this conversation is we're gonna go through, we're gonna try to identify the problem, see potential ways to solve it, and then go into like how can you be an ally for Muslim women in tech, if that sounds good with everyone. And if you guys have any questions, please do feel free to ask them on the Slido link, and you can like upvote questions as things go along. I'll try to like incorporate them within the session if they're relevant, or else we'll leave them towards the end for a Q&A. With that, I want to start our first question for all of our panelists. Just going off of, a lot of us are new to the space, or a lot of us are students, and we don't really know what's to come, you know, once we start our careers. So what experiences have you had, or problems have you seen specifically pertaining to being a woman and or being a Muslim woman in the corporate environment? And we can start this time around with, or Nef, do you want to start?
Sure. Do you mind repeating the question?
Yeah, sure. It's what experiences have you had or problems have you seen specifically pertaining to being a woman and or a Muslim woman in the corporate environment?
Sure. And like, I don't think this is necessarily specific to like being a Muslim woman, but I'm sure like it can play into it depending on like the person and like their experiences type of thing. But just what I've seen amongst like my friends and people that are just early in their career has been a lot around like imposter syndrome, especially people who like, I don't know, like first generation like college students, or kind of people who don't have like family, or people that they know are like mentors in the field. I myself struggled a lot with imposter syndrome, just trying to figure out, just like thinking about how to navigate the corporate world, and thinking about, you know, I feel like there's always this notion that like, oh, I'm not good enough, or like my friends, like we make jokes like, oh, I scammed my way into Microsoft, like I don't know how I convinced them to like hire me type of thing. And I think that like plays a lot into like confidence and I guess like putting your best foot forward like within like the corporate space. I do feel like as women, and especially like, I don't know if you're like a visibly like Muslim woman, I feel like you constantly have to like prove yourself or like work harder than like your peers, or it may seem like that or feel like that. And I guess I think, so yeah, imposter syndrome, I think to tackle that, like you have us as like, you know, people that you can reach out to, you have like people in your MSA or things like that, and like other resources that you can like navigate to kind of help you, or like get questions or clarification. I think one thing that I found helpful, there's a lot of people in my MSA that, you know, did computer science or whatever. So I'll reach out and like, hey, like, I don't understand this thing, or like, I'm struggling with this at work. Do you have any like resources or something that I can do? Or is this something that you experience type of thing? Yeah, I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, it definitely does. I guess like a follow-up question would be like, did you face, I know you spoke about imposter syndrome, but more specifically to you, like, do you feel like you had that same, like, did you feel imposter syndrome coming in as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think like my first like year of work was like very tough for me, just because I didn't know how to navigate everything. I didn't feel like I knew how to do my job, or like things are like really relaxed and like, I don't know, in the tech world, and there's not like strict like guidelines, and I'm like, oh man, am I doing this right? Like I'm not really getting feedback type of thing. And I think like in the beginning I was just like really struggling and didn't know like who I could reach out to, or like how to navigate the situation. But then I started reaching out to like people that are older than me, or like have kind of gone through it already, like to ask them questions and like, oh, how do I have these conversations with my managers, type of thing, or like how do I like, you know, figure these things out, because I think it's something that a lot of people struggle with.
Definitely, yeah, I definitely agree with that. Even like just to give some like personal input, like as an intern, I'm like, how do I, like, what do I even talk about to my manager? What do I even like speak about? So there's definitely those aspects that I can like see myself going through in the future. But thank you for sharing your experiences. Next, we can go to Yasmine.
Sure. So answering the question about whether or not I've had like specific experiences because I'm like a Muslim woman in tech, I feel like it's harder to say because like, I don't think it's necessarily because I'm a Muslim woman, but just because I'm a woman in general in tech, because like since studying computer science at school, which is like super male dominated classes, like it would be like 80% men, 20% women. And then now at Square, like my team of 9 people is all men. And then my larger team is also all men. And like my whole floor, you know, before Corona, when we could work like in the office, was like all men. So I think it's like, it's just hard not seeing, I guess, that much representation. And sometimes it's not like negative experiences that I've had, like people have told me things because I'm a woman, but it's more, I think like internally I'm like, okay, like I'm the only woman and I don't want to like mess something up, and then people think like, oh, women are bad at STEM, or women are bad at coding or something, which I don't think they will think anyways, but it definitely is like an internal thought that I have sometimes when I say something stupid to my mentor or something. I'm like, oh, does he think that now all women are stupid or all Muslims are stupid, which is like obviously not true. So sometimes I feel like I just kind of put the weight of representing the whole like group of people, whether it's all of women or all of Muslim women. But I don't think that I've necessarily had, alhamdulillah, like I haven't had negative experiences where people were like talking to me differently because I'm a woman. So yeah, and I also related to what Nef was saying about like imposter syndrome. I think especially in the beginning, and I'm still new, like I haven't been there for a full year yet. So still even now I have like imposter syndrome where I'm thinking like, how did I get here? Why am I here? But still, like every time I accomplish something and then it like actually is like making an impact in my team or like to other developers at Square, I'm like, okay, like I did something. So yeah.
That's really interesting to hear, especially like you definitely don't want to be like the token person that everyone like puts everything onto you, right? But Iqra, it seemed like you were definitely like agreeing with what she was saying. Did you want to respond to her question as well?
Sure, yeah. I think that like we put that weight on ourselves, but there is like an inherent like visibility that you get from being a Muslim woman, right? Like if you're one of the only women on your floor, then you kind of are representing women, right? Like in that floor at least. And I think that we put that pressure on ourselves because we're like so like used to, I mean, and I think with hijab, like we're so used to like representing our faith and like trying to do everything right or whatever and trying to be like a good Muslim or a good example that like even in professional life that translates over and we're like, oh, we have to be the best engineer, the best product manager, the best at everything, because that's just like how we like think about ourselves, right? And I think that might just be like an internal like Muslim person thing, but it also might just be because there's so little representation that we feel like we are the representative or like the only person that is going to reflect on that person, on all those people that you interact with, like their opinion of your gender, your religion, your, you know, group of whatever. Maybe it even has to do with being of color, because I know like a lot of people on my floor are like, especially in product, like most people are white and male. And so like occasionally I meet the like nice Asian female product manager, and that's like so great for me. And I'm like, oh, okay, like I want this person to be my mentor and this and that. But like really like most of the people I work with are like male and they're white. So like I don't know if I'm representing all people of color or all people of my faith or all women or all like anything, you know? And so it just feels so hard to be like the 1% of the 1% of the 1% representative. And I think just to kind of answer the question in like my own words, you asked about like problems that have like specifically, like I've specifically had due to being a Muslim or a Muslim woman in color or Muslim woman visibly. And I think for me, that has presented not in like my relationships with my coworkers in my job, but definitely like as I'm kind of thinking about career advancement, I'm not really sure like where I fit. I think like obviously like my dream would be like to be like director of product at like a very like, you know, awesome company. And I think I don't see people that are director of product that are me. I don't have like a lot of role models that have done that with a hijab on, with families, with kids, with, you know, like just people like me. And so I think for me, the hardest part has just been like trying to like realize what's practical and try to understand like, okay, who are people who have gone the farthest with their career that are similar to me and have similar values as me. That's been pretty difficult. And then I think another thing that has been pretty difficult for me is like when interviewing, I just seem like I'm a lot younger. That might just be my face, or it might just be because I'm still new at my job. I've only been working for 2 years. But I do sense like a bit of dismissal coming from like male engineering managers or engineering advisors. And I feel like that might be maybe because I'm in product and I'm not like an engineer. It might be that it's like my voice when I get nervous, or, you know, it could just be literally anything. But I think people who have like a male voice or are bigger or have like a sense of domination that comes from them, like a dominating appearance, definitely have the upper hand when they're interviewing and they're competing against you for the same role, especially as when it comes to like being in some kind of management or senior role. And so that has been pretty difficult for me, just trying to like beat them. And so that really sucks. So I don't know if anyone else has felt this, but that's just something that I've been coming across as I kind of grow in my career.
That's seriously, that's really interesting, just because like you always hear about, I was reading an article recently where it was a bunch of applicants, they changed their names, like they had this exact same resume, but they changed their names to sound a little more white, and the response rate for their job applications was significantly higher. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it's seriously crazy that like there's all these implicit biases that recruiters and like people in the workplace have, and that you're already put at a disadvantage just because of like your name or just because of like who you are as a person, right? So one of the biggest things that we want to tackle in this conversation is like, how can we overcome those, and how can others be an ally to Muslim women in tech? And we have one more panelist, Shafeen. Did you want to answer the question as well?
Yeah, you guys all gave a lot to respond to, so I'll try to see if I can add any value, but I don't have too much insight. Like, you know, Iqra, you mentioned kind of the career progress and kind of moving up the ladder, but in terms of just like everyday, day-to-day experiences, alhamdulillah, I've not had negative experiences because of hijab or because of Muslim. And I realize that comes from a place of privilege. And I want to preface it by, I know there are negative incidents, and I know microaggressions, Islamophobia definitely exists. Alhamdulillah, up until now, I've had a really positive experience. And I think what Nef was saying about like imposter syndrome, and that's been a huge thing for me. So maybe we can kind of visit that specifically in the Q&A and talk a little bit about solutions towards overcoming that. But I kind of look at this in the sense like, I think someone mentioned that hijab gives you like this inherent visibility. And I think it really comes down to each of us to decide, like, is that going to be something that, we can use it very positively. And I think it's something that you very consciously have to make a decision. Am I going to let this prevent me, or going to let this progress, let it help me progress, at least internally? Because I think, again, a lot of these things that can stem from, fixating too much on, oh my gosh, I'm the only hijabi in the room. Because 99% of the time I have been the only hijabi in the room. And there have been moments where I've been like, I'm also the only woman in the room. And I think it's, it's been in those moments where I've had to pause and think, okay, am I going to let this affect me or not? Because, as an EPM, I'm running these meetings, and, like Iqra said, like mostly it's all older men, right? Like a lot of times. And I'm here like a 23-year-old, like, hijabi girl with like a very valley girl voice. And I think, it's in those moments where I have to make a decision. Like, if I sit here and I freak out about I'm the only hijabi, then that's only going to prevent myself from moving forward. And I think one good thing that I've experienced, especially at these, big tech companies, is really, especially for, I mean, of course there's bad people all around, but especially for people who are just coming to the career, like they really want to see you succeed. And I think that's also been something that's helped with my imposter syndrome, is like my manager's been awesome. There's been so many mentors that I can turn to who genuinely want to help out and want to, help see you be successful if you make the effort to let them know. And so I think it really comes down to, how you want to value your own identity, and you can in some ways dictate that conversation as you move forward, at least in a general sense. So yeah, I don't know if that kind of helps add anything, but
yeah, definitely. And you were also speaking, a lot of you guys touched base on having a mentor and making sure like, that you can like run things by them and stuff. So there was a question in the Slido that said, how do you get a mentor, and what are the benefits of having a mentor? So does anyone have anything specific they wanted to add to that?
And do they mean like internally at the company, or just like Muslim women, or both?
I think you can go both ways. You can answer either or.
For me personally, my manager told me this when I first started. He was like, have as many one-on-ones as you can. And at first I was like, this is, just not something you're used to when you first come in. But I can't stress that enough about just hit people up, across the company, whoever you don't even have to be working with them, but just somebody you find interesting in your team, just schedule a chat with them and try to introduce yourself. And I think, I've always tried to like use those conversations to like let them know. I mean, you want to strike a balance between, being the new person, but also you know, not overdoing it. But I think in the beginning, you really can use that new car to your advantage. And so letting them know, like, hey, I'm new, like, I'm really wanting to learn. I want to have a successful trajectory in my career. Like, what's the advice that you have? What are the qualities that you look for? And, you know, slowly using that one-on-one and building the relationship, reaching out to them. I think there's kind of seeking out people in the team who you think could help benefit your growth is the first thing that I would do. But I don't know if others have like more long-term ideas for finding mentors.
Did anyone want to add to that?
I think that this is, sorry, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think one thing that I have been this is one thing that I've been struggling with a lot. Like I have been kind of like, I have mentors, and I think I've reached out to people in the company that like I talk to. I think for them, like I really resonate with people who have similar goals and similar values as me. And it's actually pretty difficult to find people who have the same values as you. And like for you to respect them, like on every level is pretty hard. Like, I think I find these, you know, mentors, and I feel like a lot of their lives are just so different from mine that like they have like different kinds of career goals because of it. And so it's hard to like navigate learning from them because of that. I think what I've been really like trying to actively find is someone who, like I said, is like doing something that I really want to do in the future, or like has a mindset that I think I align with pretty well. And I will keep you guys posted on if I find a good mentor. I haven't been able to find one yet, but I think it's super important. And I think as soon as I find one for myself, I think I'm definitely willing to like be a mentor for someone else too. I feel like once I kind of am able to do to figure out what I'm doing with my life, then I like want to be able to give back instantly right after that, you know, and that's so important to me that like that's why I'm pushing myself forward for that reason.
I definitely like echo that. I don't feel like I've been able to find like a mentor that kind of who has the same like mindset or like aligned goals. I think I'm still trying to figure out like what's important to me in terms of like career and like family and, you know, like Islam and stuff like that. But once I find one, let you know. But yeah, I think in general, until I can find a mentor, I've just been trying to, you know, be open with like other Muslim women that I know. Yes, I can once I find me one so that I can be a good mentor. But I've been trying to like, you know, speak with other Muslim women that I know. You know, I live in Seattle, so everyone works in tech kind of thing. And like, you know, just talk with them and see like how things are going for them, kind of what stage they're at, and just learn from them in that way. Also people that like graduated from the same school as me, just talk with them and see like how things are going for them, and understand like what their priorities are, or like, you know, maybe they're like really successful, mashallah, right now, and I'm like dude, like how'd that happen for you? I'm still trying to like navigate this and figure this out, type of thing. I don't know if that answers the question, but yeah, those are my thoughts.
For me, I like at Square have been assigned a mentor. Like every new grad, or at least every new grad software engineer, like when you start, you have like a sidekick, which is basically a mentor. And this is like a person that's not your manager. So like two separate people. And also at every past internship I've had, I've always had like a manager and mentor like assigned to me. So that's kind of what I mean when I say mentor, is like my actual assigned mentor. And I talk to him mostly because he's like on my team, mostly about like the actual tech, like the actual things I'm working on. But for like life or career help, actually not really career help, but basically there's like two other hijabis at Square. So one of them, I just like, she's kind of like adopted me somehow, even though she's not that much older than me. And I just like talk to her about things. She's not a software engineer though, so I don't really talk to her about work things, but like other things that are at work that are not like software engineering specific, if that makes sense. So like even questions about like, how do I enroll in this benefit? And like, I don't want to ask my mentor because it's kind of a stupid question. And then she'll just be like, okay, yeah, it's just here. So yeah, I haven't found a mentor like y'all are talking about that like kind of aligns with like my life values, and ideally would also be in the same career path so that I could ask her for career help and life help. But again, if I find one, I'll let you know too.
And I think adding on, like obviously there's a lack of mentors who are aligned with Muslim Islamic values, but I think in the interim, really thinking about like, it's okay to have multiple mentors. Like ideally you want one mentor, but kind of figure out what is it that you want out of this mentorship relationship, and then try to find mentors in all of those areas, right? So for career growth, maybe you need, a mentor, but then for your Islamic, knowledge and setting and how do you balance career, and maybe you need to, reach out to somebody else. So I think it's okay to try to be strategic and really figure out and brainstorm how can I get the most out of all of these people, because you don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, there aren't many Muslim people in the tech world, and you're going to have to kind of figure out, you still want to be able to, there's still great people who you can learn so much from, and you want to make sure that you're not missing career information from them that if you don't reach out, would otherwise not get.
Yeah, definitely. You bring up some really important points. Going off of that, one of the, I guess going also back to imposter syndrome, as you're a new person in the workspace, how do you kind of, you're reaching out to all these people and they might be like one or two levels above you, but do you guys also reach out to like people who are 2 to 3 levels higher, or do you not? Do you stay away from it? And also, in addition to that, have you guys come across any unhelpful or uncooperative coworkers, and how do you handle that?
Well, that's a slew of questions. I think one thing I wanted to pop in for as kind of like an add-on to our conversation that we just had about mentors, I think don't be afraid of using Muslim men as much as possible. I think one thing that we do as women is always try to look for like women mentors, and like there's hundreds of men in tech that are doing baller things, that are like killing it, that need to give back to our community and are always looking for ways. And so if you come to them and you're like, hey, like I want to be software engineer at this company, connect me with people, give me like the skills, tell me what I need to fix in my resume, like they will do it. I think a lot of people that I know, like my friends, are just like doing really great things, and I think that they all want to like give back to their community, and they think of you as a sister. So I think, I mean, obviously you may not want them for like your life advice and stuff, and like you want to keep that halal like boundary there, but I think using them in terms of like career progress, or like just like understanding the industry, or like in any way, like if you know men, I think definitely like utilize our community as much as you possibly can. And then to go back to your question, Rabia, about sorry, what was it?
Basically, like, do you guys reach out to people who are higher than you, like much higher than you, or do you keep it kind of like the same level? And how do you, if they do like turn you down or they are unhelpful, how do you navigate that?
I think it's really important to like go in with a plan. Like I think if you just schedule a one-on-one and you don't have like questions to ask them that are meaningful, that are thoughtful, that are going to engage them, then they're going to feel like it's a waste of their time. And also I think another thing that you can do is kind of like have something to bring back to them. Like even if it's something that's small that you can give them, like make it feel like an exchange, because if they're just giving you like advice and giving you feedback and stuff, then they're not gonna like get anything out of those meetings. They're just wasting 30 minutes giving you stuff, right? So I think one thing that you can do is like be like, oh, I read this really good book and like it had these like awesome takeaways. I'd love to know like what you think. Even if it's just like something that you like learned recently, but you want to give back to them, like I think it's still like something valuable that you can bring to the conversation, rather than to just be like, oh, like, and how do you feel about this? Or how do you feel about this? Or how, like it kind of turns into like an interview. And directors don't have time for that. Like VPs don't have time for that. They want to like give back, but they want to give it in a way that's like comfortable and easy for them. So that's my advice for that.
Well, also just to echo what Iqra said, like it's no shock that a lot of the Muslims that are in the tech field are men. Really utilize them. Like I have hit up so many, like obviously like not any weird way, like actually with the intention of like getting help and getting referrals and like understanding how they've been able to be successful. But I've hit up so many of like some of the MSA guys that are older than me that are like senior software engineers. It's like a very, very good resource, and they're all like very, very helpful. I think like I was like, as a student, I reached out to a lot of them. I'm like, oh, hey, like, can you take a look at my resume, or like, do you have any advice around this? Or like, advice around like offers, or even like, asking like, how do I set up a 401k? Like what stocks do I invest in? Like what, like what are like our options, like Islamically type of thing around those things. And they've been so helpful. Like I wouldn't have been able to figure it out without like their help. So I definitely like suggest utilizing like, you know, friends of friends, or like, you know, Muslim men that are like, you know, from your school or not, or just in the community. They're all really helpful. And especially I think it's nice to see like other like to see like Muslim women, you know, being successful in tech and just working in tech and stuff like that. So they've all been really helpful.
And just really quickly, going back to the question about like hitting up, you know, executives or higher ups, my mom always tells me this is like, they're just another human being. And I think really remembering that, really like a lot of these directors and stuff, they don't sit, you know, we think like when you're at the bottom, you're like, oh yeah, direct or whatnot, but at the end of the day, they're just human beings, and they've been in your position too. They, especially for all of us who are much younger starting out, like they also had to do that. And I think that they also find value, like Iqra said, like in giving back and being mentors to you know, people starting out their career. So I think use that to your advantage, and just, you know, I think someone mentioned in the chat box, just send a simple email and just see what happens. If they say no, that's fine, but at least you tried, and maybe you'll get 30 minutes to discuss, you know, a few questions with them. And also like visibility, you as a hijabi are like very easy to be remembered, right? So if you had one meeting and you were even in the back, like you're going to be remembered, and that's actually a really positive thing that you can really use to your advantage.
It can also be really negative if you're slacking. So just for the record, it's really obvious when you're not trying hard, which sucks, but just pointing that out.
Yeah, definitely. All right, thank you guys for the insights on mentorship and stuff. We have about 30-ish minutes left, or 15 to 30 minutes left. I wanted to transition more into, I know we touched base on this a little bit, but do you guys think that there's a difference between the experiences of being a woman in the corporate space versus the experiences of being a Muslim woman in the corporate space? And there's an aspect of, you know, being visibly Muslim by wearing the hijab, and or even if you don't wear the hijab, you might be wearing modest clothing. So how do you think that differs between women and Muslim women?
I'll let someone else take this because I always go first.
Nef, did you want to go?
No, I don't want to go first if anyone else wants to go. I'm still trying to think through and like formulate proper sentences.
All right.
Okay, I don't mind saying something then. I think one thing, there's like a lot to unpack, I think, around like women versus Muslim women. I think for me, the way that it's presented itself is really just like about the way people treat me, and more about like how I'm included in the conversations. I think, and it's not like work. I think like I have really, like, alhamdulillah, really good coworkers. Everyone's really friendly, and I think in tech we take that for granted, but like people don't have that in other industries. So we're already like, we've already like done pretty well for ourselves as women in general, I think, and like we've gotten like a good foothold in tech, which is awesome. So I think there's definitely not too much to complain about, but I think for me as a Muslim, I think some things that I just kind of, sometimes I just feel excluded, like I'm kind of the other, mostly because I just don't have the same interests as my coworkers. Like a lot of the things they bond about are like alcohol or like just random stuff that I just don't get, or like they want to go out for drinks after work, and I'm like, I would really just rather go home and call my mom. Like, I know that sounds lame, but like that's just who I am. So I think it's more like on a social level that I don't like connect as much. And I've also just been the kind of person who like likes to keep my coworkers and my friends. And some people at work are just very like, their work people are their friends, and that's just never going to be the case for me. So I think that for me has always been like a reason why I do feel kind of excluded, but it's like my own fault. Maybe if I was like more involved or like did more activities with them, like I would feel more like part of it. And then there's obviously like, there's a lot of little things like shaking hands with people or like being able to like hug them, and like all those things just kind of like add up to like a little bit of distance, which I think is totally appropriate. So I think I'm okay with it, but I know that it does start to feel like you're not as included, or like you're not as part of the team or like part of the culture as much. But that can just be like, a feeling that like can result from like separating yourself on your own. So that might just be my situation, but I wanted to just share that.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Yasmine, did you want to add on to that?
Yeah, so I've also been trying to think. I don't really like, it's very hard for me to pinpoint anything on me being a Muslim woman versus a woman. And it's just like, the reason it's hard is because I'm all of those things. So it's kind of hard to like separate the intersectionality and be like, oh, like this happened because of this one identity, but this one happened because of this one. So it's kind of difficult for me. So I apologize for not having a better answer, but like I said in the beginning, like it's more about like lack of representation for me. And I don't even think about lack of representation of Muslim women in tech because I haven't even gotten representation of women period in tech, right? So I think one like struggle that I've had, but I don't think it's specific to being a Muslim or being a woman is, or neither or both, is so like when the like, you know, recently like the Black Lives Matter movement got like more traction, like, you know, late May, early June, and like on social media and stuff, it got more traction, I mean, and it's just super weird for me coming into work and like the whole, like, especially in the beginning, like the whole time I'm like reading about all these things and I'm like super sad about it. And like everything that I talk about with all of my friends is only about this issue and nothing else, right? And then I come to work and everyone's like, so how was your weekend? And like everyone just talks about like everything but that. They're just like, oh yeah, like I went kayaking. Like it's just very weird for me that like it's not talked about, at least on the team level for me. We do have like weekly all hands now, and like at the top, like the CEO does talk about every single week. He like brings like Black Lives Matter into it, or like diversity in general. But like maybe it's my specific team thing, but like it's just weird that like it's never spoken about. But for me, it's like on my mind a lot, and I'm sure for others it is. So again, I don't think that's a specifically Muslim woman issue, but I just wanted to bring it up because it's an issue and I'm a Muslim woman, so maybe there's a connection. So yeah, that's all I got.
I definitely like echo that. Like, I don't know, it's kind of hard to separate and to think about like something that's happened because I'm like a woman, and then because I'm a Muslim woman, and then because I'm a Black Muslim woman, like there's like I hold you know all of those identities, and like there's no representation around any of them, so it's very, very hard to like separate from there. I feel like I have the opposite though, where like I'm able to connect with my coworkers like easily, and like I don't know, I think once I'm like more open about like, you know, Muslim, like being Muslim, like, oh, Eid's coming out, my coworkers like, hey, Eid Mubarak, like, you know, like how's it going, how'd Eid go? And I'm like, what, you knew it was Eid, like that type of thing. Or like, you know, we have like a field outside of work and we go on walks and stuff like that, so I think like that's an easy way for me to like connect with my coworkers. I do agree that sometimes it's weird, like I remember specifically like around what happened in New Zealand. I was like so upset, and I come to work and everyone's just like, hey, how you doing? Like, like how was the weekend? The weather's so nice outside. And I'm like, this is literally what we're talking about when like people are being like murdered type of thing. And I think I learned to, like, I think that's always the case type of thing. And it doesn't have to be, and it shouldn't be, but I'm like, okay, this is like the case, like no one wants to talk politics at work, it's like not correct type of thing. So I'm just like, okay, it is what it is type of thing. And I do think I've had some like negative experiences around like being a woman, or like, you know, I find times like even with my like own manager, I'm like working on something and like I'm the only like engineer working on it, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is the situation. And then some guy on my team will say it, my manager's like, oh yeah, great, makes sense. And I'm like, I literally like just told you that, like that type of stuff. But I don't think that's like necessarily because of me being a woman versus a Muslim woman versus a Black Muslim woman. I think yeah, it's kind of hard to separate those type of things.
Definitely. It's like, because we're identifying as all of these different groups, you know, there's no real like division line where you can say like, oh, this is part of this identity, this is part of this identity versus part of this identity. So it's definitely pretty hard to distinguish. Shafin, did you want to add on to that?
Not really. I mean, I think just something that I think was clear from all three of their answers, very eloquently put, but I think, you know, there are much bigger structural issues in the tech world. And, you know, like we need to think about how can we pull the tech world out of like the silo and the place of privilege that it's in. You know, there's like abundance of luxury and places of privilege. And, you know, when you just even looking at like tech companies, like I know Google, like for example, like if you go to a tour, Google, like free food, free coffee, free food, like all this, you know, even at that small level, it really goes to show like where, you know, what we're, you know, where we're at as a community. And then like internally, you know, like none of these issues are being talked about. Like, you know, what, you know, something I think a lot about is like, who is the user that we're building for in the tech world, right? Like, you know, homeless people have phones nowadays. Are we building, you know, are we thinking about how they use our phones and they use our products? You know, and that applies to a whole different array of issues, whether it's like racial justice issues or, what about Palestinians living in Palestine? Like, how do they use our products, right? Throughout any tech company. So I think we need to start thinking about on a larger level, how can we get the tech world to start recognizing that it has a huge impact and huge responsibility on affecting social good issues. And until technology, you know, I remember I had a conversation with my friend and she was like, you know, technology could literally be the issue to solve homelessness, right? If somebody just sat down and actually wanted to make that difference, we have the wealth, we have the resources. So, you know, point being, there needs to be a much bigger kind of significant change at the top level in the tech industry about where we see our role playing in the rebuilding of society. And I think we as Muslim women can be like the voices leading that, and we should be, because that's what our faith teaches us. So yeah, sorry, I just went on a rant, but that's it. Rant done. That's like my poli-sci background coming down.
Yeah, no, I totally believe in that. And I think like as technologists, like we definitely have the capacity and the infrastructure built to create tools to affect social good and social change. The thing is, I think right now we're all really, really young in our careers. And if we talk to people who are like doing this at like a larger scale or like building their own nonprofits, they are coming across like problems that are more political, but they are still affecting change in like whatever way they possibly can. And I think that's like the most you can hope for, right? Is at least to like fight the system as much as you possibly can and really create change with your career. And so I think that's super important. Thanks for bringing that up.
Of course, yeah. And I think sorry, you made me think of something when you said, and I think also remembering though, like, since I know, you know, everyone on here is probably thinking about career trajectories and where they want to end up, like we need to be in those rooms, in those conversations where these decisions are being made. Like, for example, responses to after George Floyd, like all these company responses, you know, there's a specific set of people at the company who actually get to play a role in coming up with those, how we're going to react. And in general, like, you know, that kind of is where we should think about how we can get our voices heard in those rooms.
So going off of that, do you guys think, how do you insert yourself into those conversations? Do you guys just walk up and say like, hey, I have some stuff to contribute, or how do you go about that?
I think that's a question for Shafeen, so go ahead.
I have absolutely no idea. I'm still figuring it out, I think. I don't know. I think that comes to the hardest part where, you know, it's hard because it's like, it's a professional setting, right? I think Yasmine and Neff, you both said this, like no one's talking about it, right? And it's hard to balance like what's okay to bring up with leadership and what's okay to bring up in these spaces, even just with team members. Like, you never know, like, what your team member like is going to think if you bring up, I don't know, specific topics. And so I think it's something that I'm still trying to figure out and still trying to strike a balance between. But, you know, I'm telling this to myself first and foremost, is like, I think I'm gonna have to tell myself, like, you're gonna have to be put into challenging, uncomfortable spaces or positions where I'm gonna have to be, you know, of course I am. It's not like the team and the company and our own coworkers don't realize that we're the only hijabi women, right? Like they can see that we're the only Muslim women. And I think there is something that's going to come with that, and they have to be okay with, you know, accepting our voices, and we should challenge ourselves to kind of take that difficult step of speaking up when we think something should be done or something is wrong, or etc. So sorry, I don't really have a direct answer. I don't know, maybe Nef or Iqra, or Yasmine, if you guys, have anything to add more.
I mean, I think like in a political, like, I guess it just depends like what you mean by speaking up, right? Like, I think, okay, like if Workday's statement against what happened with George Floyd was like incorrect and the way they handled it was pretty wrong, like I think I would have literally gone to the like CHRO and been like, hey, like I think this is messed up, like we really should have written like a more clear message condemning the actions or whatever. But I think when it comes to like actually being in those rooms making those decisions, that is literally just going to be about us getting our foot in the door. Like like we just have to get power. Like that's just like something that Muslim women, Muslims, Muslim men, we all don't have enough of it, and we all need to like start putting that as like a priority for our community in America. Like if we really want to affect change, we need to be the CEOs, the CTOs, the CFOs, the CHROs. We need to be them, but that's just the case. And I mean, if that means starting our own companies that grow, sure. If it means like working the system and just working it all the way up and getting up there, I think that's like the fundamental way to actually be these people in power. And that's it just depends how you want to manage it. Maybe you want to just work your way up and then eventually run for political office, whatever. Like, I don't know, maybe like drop ship and go be a lawyer, go be, whatever you want to do. I think it just means like you have to be the best at what you do so that people respect you and people listen to you. And I think, sure, like I think in our own communities right now, we should definitely go and like be advocates for our causes. And that's something we should always be doing anyways. But I think if you want to like actually change the systems, then you have to get the power. And I think that that's something that, we all should aspire to do, and not just kind of live in our own bubbles of just family life and chilling at home and just being happy. I think if you really want the systems to change, you have to put it as a priority.
Yeah, we have to think bigger, and change isn't going to happen at the small levels that sure, you can respond to an email and say something, but if we want structural change, we have to think a lot bigger. So I definitely agree with everything you said.
I think on the other end of like, because I think I haven't done anything so far to improve the structural things that are like a problem for the Muslim community, or like any community really, at work at least. But like on the opposite end of like the small things that you're talking about with like the emails, like I do feel free to do that. Like, for example, there was like an email that was sent out to everybody at Square, and it was like it was about the George Floyd incident, and like that email was fine, but then somebody responded, and it was very weird, but like they basically like were like in support, but they said like a bunch of problematic things like in there, and like I just ended up like messaging him on Slack and being like, hey, like, thank you so much for like all the good words you said, but here are the reasons why the things that you said were like pretty problematic. And like the fact that you sent it to the entire company also is like, maybe think about that before sending it out. And if we're talking about like, I know obviously that doesn't help with like structural things, but like, I feel like even trying to have those little conversations, I hope could help. So like, I try to do those if I see fit, and whether they were like the CEO or like the same level or anything, like I would have messaged him. I didn't check first what level he was in anyways, but I'm just saying like for answering the question of just like how do you talk to somebody at the company, I think like after a while you kind of get used to like anybody messages you and you message anybody and it's fine. So like if you want to message the CEO, I'm not saying you're going to get a response though, but like you could try. Or if you want to message anybody in between you and the CEO, like you can. So I think you can use that to your advantage to get your point across if you feel like something that was said was like problematic. So yeah.
Definitely, yeah. If you want to bring change, you definitely have to start with, bringing up the problems you already have and trying to change people's mindsets, bringing awareness to the issue. I wanted to redirect the conversation. I honestly, I really love this, but for the sake of time, into our last question for our panelists. What specific ways do you think others, this can be people of other faiths, men, anyone in the workplace, can support Muslim women in the corporate world and in the workspace? Yasmine, did you want to start?
Yeah, I'll take this one first since I never speak first. But I think that one thing that I really like when people who are not visibly Muslim do is like simply saying salam. Like that's it. Just like, because like I can only see me and the other two hijabis, and I'm like, okay, in my head, like that's all the attendance I have for Muslim. Like I have no idea, like you kind of look Arab and you could be Muslim, but I can't assume that and I don't know. So I've loved when people, whether they're like, especially like, I feel like a lot of men have like said salam to me, which I really like appreciate, just like knowing that like, okay, there's somebody else in the room that is Muslim. I feel like that's really like appreciated by me, at least. I think it helps knowing that like, we're not that alone. There's like a few more people, so it's nice. But yeah, someone else can jump in.
Shafi?
I think, Iqra, you mentioned this earlier, but just, Muslim men like be open to, reach out to other women in the company and, or even just that, are in the tech field and see how you can help, like ask them, right? Like maybe they want, maybe they just, whatever it is, career advice or referrals or whatnot, like proactively do your part in figuring out how you can help rather than waiting for them to reach out, because sometimes it's awkward. It's weird, like you don't want it to be interpreted in the wrong way. And, I think it'll be really beneficial to them to feel, like Yasmine said, like say salam, like doing things like that proactively actually show that you're there makes a huge difference. And I think, somebody also mentioned this too, sorry to keep just re-mentioning what other people say, but we need to think about like how long-term can we actually build spaces where we can uplift Muslim women and, support them, whether it's, financially, whether it's getting them, like there's endowments and all these different ways that other communities have figured out how to support internally. And I think we also need to do the same thing for Muslim women in tech. And so thinking really big about, whether, how we, we're kind of this new generation. So how can we make sure that, Muslim women coming up don't have the same, maybe struggles or issues that we did. So I think, I think helping, thinking about like there's a Muslim Women in Tech Facebook group, which is a good start in the right direction, right? Like starting to at least create a community and inshallah that can turn into more like institutional support as well in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think I definitely agree with everything you said, Shafeen. Like, I think creating those organizations that will uplift us in the future and creating them now is just the way to start. And I think we just don't have it. So we really need to like start putting those fundamental building blocks and start building the institutions that are going to promote women in the industry and in the future, and educate them in whatever way we need education. I think one thing that I would ask of Muslim men, if they're watching this video or if they're in this call, is sponsor us. I think there's a difference between mentorship and sponsorship. I don't know if you guys are familiar, but basically sponsorship means you kind of just go and find and evangelize this person. You go find opportunities for this person and you go and help them grow in whatever way and shape and form they want to grow. Like for me, one of my friends has actually like gone and like, I told him, I was like, hey, I kind of want to work at this kind of company. I kind of want to be doing this kind of work. And he literally went and gave me like a list of companies where he knows people who are working in product at higher roles. And he was like, I can pretty much reach out to any one of these 6 people and ask them to give you a job or ask them to at least interview you. So you tell me what you want and I'll go after it for you. And I think that is something that is very hard to get. And it's very rare. And I think that we should be doing it for each other. And I think I try to do it in my own company, but like if your company is recruiting, you should go and message all the people that you think want this job and try to get them that job, because that's like, I think, I don't know, for me, I feel it's like my duty as a Muslim, but like, I think other people maybe don't see it that way. I think it's so important to uplift our community and bring more of our people into like systems that, we had trouble getting into.
Rabia, can you repeat the question?
Yes, I can. What specific ways do you think others, whether it's people of other faith or men, can support Muslim women in the workspace?
Okay. So I think like, it can be simple things like saying salam and like making space for that person, like in a meeting or something like that. And like, being an ally in those spaces. I do also echo what Iqra said about like sponsor folks. Like literally like the only way we're going to get tech to be more diverse is by bringing our people in, type of thing. And like for me, like, that's literally the only way like I have been able to like navigate the tech space is by like utilizing other Muslims and like other Muslim guys especially like when I was graduating, like they were so helpful in getting me interviews, like things like that. And at that point, it's up to you to like succeed in the interviews and whatever it is, but like sponsor people, like that's a big one. You know, and it doesn't, and like yeah, I think, yeah, like sponsor people, create those opportunities for people, and be like willing to give back and help, because like so many people have, like, I don't know, in my situation, so many people have helped me. I should be able to, it's my responsibility to do that for other like Muslim women, or Muslims in general, or Black folks in general. And I do think like, I think Shafeen mentioned like organizations, you know, like Muslim Women in Tech and stuff, and make sure like those organizations also create space for, I guess like more minority, like Muslim communities, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Definitely, and it's part of our faith to, you know, give back. You know, we're not just supposed to do whatever we can to climb the ladder, right? You know, we have to give back, and that's how we build our communities. That's how we build these infrastructures. So that's definitely very important. And if you think about it, even in the tech space, referrals are basically how you get in. Like the chance that you get into a company through a referral is significantly higher versus if you just plainly send out an application, right? So it's very important for others to support Muslim women through referrals, through sponsorship, through mentorship, and things like that. Just before we go, I'm not sure if we'll have time for Q&A, but what's one piece of practical advice you would give to Muslim women starting out?
I'll go first. So I think this is probably not just one piece, but I think one to start is like own your identity, and like know that like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wrote for you to be where you're at, and that you're meant to be there, type of thing. And then also like utilize like resources, utilize other people in the Muslim community, utilize your friends. You know, you find a Muslim girl on your floor, like hang out with her, talk to her, learn about her experience. You know, you guys can truly benefit from each other, and, you know, learn from people, but also be willing to give things to other people and allow them to learn from you, type of thing.
I think one thing that I would say that I haven't said already, I mean, I've said a lot of things. So one thing that I will say is you don't have to be loud. You don't have to be aggressive. You don't have to be, I guess, all of those qualities that kind of make you seem sharky. I think all you have to do is really like make sure you use your voice in your profession, whether it's like at work or in your community, but use your voice for good. And I know that sometimes it feels like, oh, like you want to be shy, you want to be like not like humble, but I think using your voice and like not being shy is actually going to get you really far in your career. And I think that's something that I've kind of had to like fight with, like personally, because I kind of believe that like Muslim women should kind of maintain a level of like modesty and humbleness, and like there's like, I don't know, there's like this like sphere of like qualities that I want, but then I know there's this sphere of like qualities that just will get me where I need to go. And I think that you can be loud, and you can be aggressive, and you can be you know, like determined and driven without losing out on the good qualities of being modest and humble. And I think just try to balance that really well, and try to speak out whenever you hear someone's, you know, being wronged, or you want something for yourself career-wise that's going to eventually benefit you and your family in the future. Don't hide. That's something that I think is really important for Muslim girls to hear, because I feel like a lot of my friends, they don't like apply for opportunities that are out there. They think like, oh, I'm not going to get this, or I don't have enough skills, or like there's a lot of imposter syndrome, and there's also lots of fear. I don't understand it, but I think and I think I got over this pretty fast, because I was in like an all male industry, and like all my classes were full of guys, and so I had to just like get over it fast. But I think some people that I know are still in this mindset of like, no, like I can't do it. I don't know how to do it. And I think just try your best and just go for it. Just apply to everything, go after everything. If you have a dream, even if it's a small like idea that's like swimming in your mind, go after it. Don't be shy. Try everything and build stuff.
Yasmine or Shafeen, anything?
I'll keep it short, since I looked at the questions on Slido, and they're some of them are good. I mean, all of them are good questions, but I'm sure people would want to hear their questions answered. But I think just like echoing Iqra, like try everything, apply to everything. Like it's hard sometimes because like I also get it, like I have imposter syndrome, like it comes and goes, but like just like try to apply to everything, even because the thing is also like men apply to everything even when they're not qualified, and then they get it and then they're in the more qualified positions. But it's like, and then every time, and my dad always tells me this, because like I would look at positions and it would be like, oh, you need 1 year of experience, and I was a new grad, so I was like, I can't apply. And he'd be like, literally so many men have applied and gotten it, and like they don't even, like, it's fine, like if you have the skills you could still get it. So I think just applying to everything, and also even though it's hard given imposter syndrome, just trying to be confident in like what you're saying. I've like been trying to do this lately in meetings, like instead of like a question mark at the end of my sentences, like, oh, does this thing do this? I'm like, yeah, this thing does this. And they're like, oh my God, Yasmine's so smart. I'm just kidding. No one says that. But I think just being confident and trying as much as you can would really help starting out. So yeah.
So I would, yeah, I agree with everything everyone said. I would add on like a little bit of a different side, since I think you guys covered most of the general like career stuff. I really like what Iqra said about the idea of kind of like how to balance like ikhlas and akhlaq and like adab and like all these like Islamic manners, Islamic qualities, and moving forward and also moving forward in your career. And I would add on to that and like ground your work life with your faith and with your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is so important. And I think too often I've seen like young professionals, especially in the Muslim industry, like not Muslim industry, in the Muslim community, like we kind of like are really happy and comfortable with where we're at. We're making a lot of money and like everything's going really, really well. And I think we have to remember like that's a really important point to just stop and pause and like really reflect on how we can, make sure that our faith is like a daily part of our life. And I mean that on a both internal level, like in your company, find a place, do not be afraid to ask for a place to pray. Don't be afraid of like I know some people, try to avoid the handshakes thing. Like, that is something that's, we think it's so awkward, but at the end of the day, like people respect us for it. And like, I always remember like I had to surrender like my first day of work, my manager knew about that. And there's like, I was meeting, another coworker and he wanted to handshake. And then my manager was like, doing like the, no, like we talked about this, remember? And it turned into a funny moment and we all laughed it off and it was funny. Like, I was like making a motion, but you guys can see, when you use your, never mind. I'm not going to try to describe what the motion was. Like by your neck, you're like, no, like don't avoid that.
I do like this small wave and then they just like awkwardly like back off. I'm like,
yeah.
Oh, hey.
Yeah. And even just like, what I did like before when I was interviewing, I didn't want to, obviously you're a lot more nervous before you get the job. I just sent out like a quick email to the recruiter. And I was like, hey, let everyone know like that I just have a faith-based reason. And I think the more confident you are and the more that you embrace your values, you will see the barakah of that in your day-to-day life and people respect you for it. And then even externally, seek out ways of, learning ilm and like making sure that you're also working on yourself Islamically. Because, we live in a secular Western society and we also work at those types of companies, but it's really important that we make sure that we're holding on to like our Islamic framework and our Islamic values.
Okay, last thing, just to chime in on that, I think like once you get into tech, it's really easy to get caught up in like, this like super privileged world. Everyone's like making, all this money and like, doing whatever they want. I think like, I think it's important to be like really grounded in faith and realize that you have that privilege and that it's a blessing, and like make space and give back to the community for people who don't have that.
Yes, agreed.
All right, with that kind of concludes our main portion. I want to like breeze through Q&A because we don't have a lot of time. But there is one question here that I feel like it'd be very important for for people who don't necessarily identify as a Muslim woman to know. The question was, it's usually best to treat everyone the same, but what are some indicators that a Muslim sister colleague might need support, essentially treating them as a sister rather than just another colleague?
Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
What are some indicators a Muslim sister colleague might need support? So basically treating them more as a sister rather than just a workplace colleague.
I think this depends on whether you're a man or a woman, right? Like,
I think it's coming from the men's perspective.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought too. I think for me, I think it's just like, it's never a harm to check in on someone. And I think like the worst thing they could say is like, I'm totally fine and I don't need anything. And I like really appreciate you reaching out. I don't know like what indicators there would be of like me needing help. I think like maybe just like me missing things that I normally attend, or like I seem frustrated, or like just like the regular indicators, I think would be like enough for someone to like want to reach out. But I think in general, like and every few months check-in never hurts, and like as long as it's done with like a proper intention and it's halal, then I think like there's definitely no issue. And just like asking like, hey, like how can I support you in your career growth or as a Muslim in this industry?
Yeah, and there's also like the aspect of like being respectful of physical limits, like no handshakes, no hugging, things that Shafin was saying. I really like how you said sending a quick email to the recruiter in the beginning, like, hey, this is part of my faith, I don't shake hands. I felt like for me that was very helpful. Like I never realized that could be something I could do. Yeah. Does anyone else have anything to add on to that?
I've never done that, but I kind of just always say like, oh, hey, I don't shake hands, and I just sit down and like I say like, how's your day going? And I feel like I feel like in 2020, it's never been like an issue for anyone. Like they're never offended. I think it may come across like it may be a little bit awkward if you're like at dinner and like in front of everyone, you kind of reject their handshake or something. Like I don't know. I think it's totally fine if it's not like a said thing from in advance too. I think it's almost better if it's spontaneous, because it's just like, oh, like it's just an awkward moment and then we just sat down and got over it. But yeah, I think like emailing, I guess it would like clarify if like someone took it offensively, it would clarify the situation. So that's a cool thought. Thanks, Shafin.
No, I agree with Iqra. Like you don't have to, I mean, I was just mentioning the email case in one, but I don't want everyone to think you have to, like, that's the only way. Like,
no, but that's a good idea. Like,
yeah, of course. But then like, I think there's so many, it's so hard. Like there's so many spontaneous meetings that you have. And obviously there's a lot of men at work. Like I remember my first few weeks, I had the same script, like literally probably did it like 4 times a day. Right. So it's okay. Like people, you just, I always kind of put my hand by my chest and I just say like, for faith-based reasons, you just kind of like do the nodding. For faith-based reasons, I can't, and you just kind of have if anyone's interested in the exact words, we can help with that later. But, I think it, like Iqra said, like no one's ever been offended and people are actually just nice about it and you just move on. Like people don't, not to be like harsh or anything, but people don't really care. Like nobody cares. Like everyone's so busy. Like people just want to get to discussing what needs to get discussed in the meeting. Like, we kind of make it a big deal in our heads, but everyone's over it in like the first 3 minutes, first 30 seconds.
Yeah. And then to add on to that, like I know like this used to happen to me like a long time ago, like in college, like a guy would put his hand on my shoulder or like tap me or like, like random stuff like that just happens between like colleagues or whatever. I have not had that happen to me like in my professional setting at all. Like, and I was super worried about it, like going into work. I was like, oh, like, how am I going to manage, like if someone touches me or like manage, like, what if it's my manager? I don't want them to feel like uncomfortable, but like, I also need to tell them. But like, no one has touched me. I don't think I've been touched by a coworker in like 2 years. So I think that's been something that I think is overblown. So I would say like, people are not like trying to touch you. It's definitely not an issue.
Yeah, everyone in tech is really awkward also. So like, if you have to awkwardly tell someone like you don't want to shake their hands, like it's fine because people are just awkward. Like work is just awkward sometimes. But to go back to the question on from the Slido, I think that like it never hurts to reach out. And I also think like if you don't know this like Muslim girl, I think that like the default should be to treat her as like a sister, right? Like in thinking about like sponsors, like wanting to sponsor and like uplift like Muslim women in the tech industry. Yeah, and it also doesn't hurt to just like reach out and, if they're not struggling or don't need anything from you, then, they'll let you know type of thing. But and even, maybe then they may not need it now, but may in the future be like, oh, this nice Muslim guy reached out to me. Maybe I can ask him a few questions type of thing. I've had that happen for me a few times. So yeah, I think just by default, like reach out.
Yeah. There was a question about how to Salah work in the workplace. Iqra just posted a comment, and so I think that basically answers the question. I wanted to cover the question on are there any professional organizations for Muslim women in tech? I know, Iqra, you're part of Muslim Women in Tech, but maybe you can speak about that, and if any of you guys have other organizations that you want to shout out, I know our audience would love to hear it.
There's a lot more like ethnic groups as well. So like I said, I'm also a part. I just joined Pakistani Women in Computing, but there's like a series of those. There's like Arab Women in Computing, Persian Women in Computing, like literally like tons of groups you can join if you like want to identify with more like minority groups. And I think like it kind of gives you a diverse perspective too. Like so for me, like I was totally comfortable just jumping into the Muslim scene, but I think having like that Pakistani international connection has actually been pretty cool, like hearing about
Dubai.
Sorry, my internet cut out for a second, but thank you for the answer. Do anyone else, or Yasmine, do you want to speak?
Oh, no, I wasn't gonna speak. I was gonna say, like, I couldn't hear you at the end either, so maybe you're.
Oh, I think it was just maybe me then.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically just, I was just saying there's a lot of different places where there's a lot of different groups for like different ethnic groups too. So if you want to join like a more, like a smaller tight knit or like more ethnic community that speaks your language and all of that, like you can totally join the ones from the AnitaB.org like group. You can kind of look through like all the different groups they have. And so the reason why we actually even started Muslim Women in Tech was because they had like Arab, Pakistani, Persian, this and that. And we were just like, what about just like Muslim? Like, why do we have to be like Arab or Pakistani or like whatever, or Indian? Why not just like have a Muslim one? And that's like kind of where that whole thing even started. We didn't have our own session at Grace Hopper and we were upset about it. So, you know, I think like, there's definitely lots of places where you can go and meet new people and try like get new perspectives.
Definitely. You said AnitaB.org?
Yeah. You can actually just go to like GHC, I think, .org too, and like it all connects to the AnitaB.org community.
Oh, gotcha. Right, that's really good for all of our attendees. Does anyone else have anything else to add, or should I go on to the next question? We only have, I'm probably only going to take one or two more questions. What do you like and dislike about your respective companies? Shafeen, if you want to, or
I think Shafeen should. No, I think Shafeen should.
I don't mind going first. And I think this is probably like very specific to my team, and like I'm not on main campus, I'm on a smaller campus. So I mean, I think perks are cool, especially like in Seattle, a lot of the companies don't have perks. So it's nice that my company has perks. Also, there's like a parking lot right next to the masjid, so like you don't have to worry about masjid parking, like a Microsoft parking lot right next to the masjid. So I think like that's great. And also a lot of my like teammates are like older and are like more like into like their family. So they respect like a lot of my values. So I'm like, oh, I'm, you know, going to visit family for a week, like leave me alone, or like I can bring up like Ramadan or like, you know, things like that. And like they don't drink at all. It's amazing. So great. So there's like nothing around that. And I think things that I dislike, I think this is specific to the tech industry I think this is specific just like working in the corporate world. Like there's a lot of like bureaucracy and like things like that I don't necessarily like about work, or, you know, it's very male dominated, and like issues around that, but I don't think that's like specific to my company.
I'll do just like a quick pro con thing. I think one thing that Workday has that a lot of companies don't have is a lot of female representation in leadership. They're not Muslim for sure, but there's a pretty good percentage of our workforce is female, and they like really empower women, and that's like a really big thing for Workday. So that's been pretty cool. I actually don't feel like I felt like in college, I definitely had that like male dominated like feeling all the time. And I feel like now, because of like seeing more women at Workday specifically, like I've actually gotten over that completely. And I think maybe when I switch companies, I'm going to be pretty bummed about like going back to that like male dominated experience. But I think that's been really good so far. Cons, I think, big companies just kind of like suck when it comes to like getting things done pretty efficiently, and like there's a lot of like oversight and you can't really like innovate as quickly as you want. So there's that. I think working at like probably a smaller company would be more fun for me to like be able to be more creative and have less supervisors managing what I work on. So there's that.
I'll speak as well about Square things. So pros and cons. Pros, I feel like it's really easy to reach out to anybody in the company to ask for help. Like usually I don't message a specific person, but like I sometimes do, and I like that I can do that if I need to. And they're always like willing to help, which is really nice. I also, like Nev said, like there's a lot of perks, I think, of like, I don't know, like the food and I miss the food and the snacks and all that. And like the office is really nice too. I think a con, because Square is like relatively new, kind of, like just like documentation for things is not very standardized. So sometimes it's very hard to find like the way to do something. Like it's like this team wrote this part of it and this team wrote this part of it, but I just want to go through all the steps, but like it's like kind of all over the place sometimes. And like obviously I think that'll like improve as time goes on, because hopefully the processes will become more standardized. So it's kind of the opposite of like big companies. Like there's a lot of bureaucracy, and like maybe their processes are probably very well documented and like easy to find, versus like Square, there's like not a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of steps before doing things, but it's so hard to find things sometimes. So it's like kind of pick your poison there.
Thank you all for sharing your insights. That was very helpful just to gain a better understanding of what's going on in the tech world. I wanted to thank all of you panelists for spending an hour and a half of your time with us. I know it was very beneficial to me and so many of us who are here in the audience. I know we couldn't get to all the Q&A questions. I'm really sorry, but we run out of time. Inshallah, if you do want to, some of our panelists are on the Slack workspace, so you can probably message them, or they can drop their contact information in the chat. We do have another event coming up about effective ways of job hunting in about 30 minutes, so you can join then. But as for now, that concludes this panel. Thank you all for coming. Jazakallahu khairan, and assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Rabia and Shams, and all the people who put this together. Jazakallahu khairan.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Assalamu alaikum.
Sorry.